evening. Welcome to those of you watching from home tonight, and welcome to our panelists. My name is Kristen Malone, and I'm co-president of League of Women Voters of Glen, Ellyn, along with Erica Nelson. Thank you for joining us for this candidate forum for the DuPage District 4. Tonight, we will be hearing from the county board candidates, incumbent Republican Tim Elliott and Democratic candidate Lynn LaPlante. And for the Forest Preserve, we will hear from incumbent Republican Tim Whelan and Democratic candidate Jeff Gahris. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. We encourage the informed and active participation of citizens in government. The League works to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Our moderator tonight is Barbara Young. Barbara Young is a member of the LaGrange Area League of Women Voters and a League of Women Voter Illinois trained moderator. She is a partner in the Chicago law firm of Glen, Christie, Taglia, LLP, and is an active member of many women's rights organizations. Welcome, Barbara, and thank you for moderating this evening.
Good evening. It's an honor for me to be moderating tonight's candidates forum. I would like to begin by reviewing some of the League's ground rules for candidate forums. All 4 candidates have signed and returned the ground rules. These rules specify the format, time limits, and other rules related to the conduct of the forum. I will be responsible for enforcing these rules. The candidates will begin with their opening statements. They will alternate the order in which they answer questions. And after the question and answer portion is concluded, each candidate will give their closing statement. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for their opening statement, 1 minute to respond to each question, and 1 minute to make a closing statement. The responses will be timed, as you will see on the screen. The questions were gathered in advance from the public. A panel of experienced League members reviewed the questions to confirm their appropriateness for these particular races and to avoid duplication. Tonight's forum is being recorded. The League claims ownership rights of any copyrights of the recording or transcripts produced at the forum. The forum will be posted in its entirety on the League's Facebook page, website, and the League of Women Voters Illinois Voter Guide. Any other uses of the forum recording requires the express written consent of the League. Audio and video must be broadcast unedited and in its entirety, except by media reporting on tonight's event. Finally, I want to emphasize how grateful we are for these candidates who are not only willing to serve in office, but who have agreed to participate in this evening's forum. We are going to begin with the candidates for county board. At this time, I would ask both candidates to unmute yourselves and turn on your video. Perfect. We will now begin with the candidates' 2-minute opening statements. And going in alphabetical order, we're going to begin with the incumbent Republican candidate, Tim Elliott.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be back before the Glen Ellyn League of Women Voters. And I want to congratulate the League again as it celebrates 100 years of service this year. I'm a Glen Ellyn native. I grew up here, went to Glenbard West High School, attended Miami University and Harvard Law School, and my wife Ann and I are now raising our 4 children in Glen Ellyn. We are very deeply invested in this community. My family has served this community steadfastly since 1972, when my father came here as the principal of Glenbard West High School. And I've spent most of my adult life in service to this community. As a member of the Plan Commission and Village Board in Glen Ellyn, on the DuPage Stormwater Commission and Water Commissions, as the president of the DuPage County Historical Museum Foundation, and as a member of one of our most important social services organizations, Metropolitan Family Services of DuPage. During my first term on the county board, I've been a staunch advocate for the people and businesses of District 4, and it's produced results. Those results have included helping chase an illegal adult business out of Wheaton, where it was located close to a school, working to create the East Branch of the DuPage River Trail, helping neighborhoods with problems that affect them, like noise pollution and light pollution and traffic problems. I've been a good advocate for this community, but don't just take my word on it. I'm very proud that I am endorsed by every one of the mayors in District 4. I'm also endorsed by the Daily Herald and by organizations that frankly typically only endorse or usually only endorse Democrats, like the Operators Unions 150 and Local 399. In closing, I want to say something that I think is very important. Forums like this serve an important function, and I'm grateful to the League for hosting this forum. I hope we do better than we heard last night. That was frankly abysmal.
I think they set us a low bar.
People of every party and creed need to know and understand that their elected leaders condemn and oppose violence and hatred in all stripes. And when people communicate by mudslinging, hurling insults, talking over each other and interrupting each other, that's not a way to govern. It's not what I've done in Glen, Ellyn, and DuPage County, and it's not the way I'll operate if I am fortunate enough to be reelected. So thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll turn to the Democratic candidate. 2-minute opening statement, Lynn LaPlante.
Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event tonight. My name is Lynn LaPlante, and I'm running for the DuPage County Board in District 4. I live here in Glen, Ellyn with my husband, Mike Alloway. We've been married for 23 years, and we have 4 children. I'm a 3-term elected precinct committee person with Milton Township, a proven community leader, and a dedicated volunteer. I am a proud union member, a professional violinist and writer, and I earned my bachelor's degree from the University of Illinois and my master's degree from the University of Notre Dame. I am running for office because I believe passionately in public service, and I feel it is our civic duty to give back to our communities. I am also motivated to run because I can't sit idly by while I watch what is unfolding in our country. They say true change starts 2 steps beyond your comfort zone. And like many of you, I have found myself pushing outside of my comfort zone again and again since the 2016 election. Last night's presidential debate reminded me all over again of the importance of standing up and doing our part to help affect change. All of you watching this video are doing your part by educating yourself on candidates, and I'm doing my part by running. To those of you canvassing, handing out literature, writing postcards, talking to your friends and neighbors about their voting plan, putting signs up in your yard, I see you and I thank you. This is how we make change. I am also motivated to run for office because I see a county board that doesn't represent the true demographics of DuPage County. And representation matters. Having a seat at the table matters. Having a voice in local office matters. This election is our chance for change. This election is about the soul and character of our country. And it's time we elect a county board that reflects our true community. And it's time that we focus on caring for the people of DuPage County. It's time for change. Thank you.
Okay. Now we're going to turn direct to our question and answers. And I'm going to begin with candidate LaPlante. What are your top 3 priorities if you are elected?
My top 3 priorities. The first one would be to really investigate the system that we have in place with our statements of economic interest. A statement of economic interest is every candidate has to fill one out. It shows some possible conflicts that you may have as an elected official. My statement of economic interest lists 0 conflicts. My opponent lists 9. As far as I can tell, that's the most on the county board currently. The Tribune just did a really hard-hitting editorial on this topic last week, talking about the need for a reform and an overhaul of our statement of economic interest. So that's going to be the first one. That goes along with my need and my goals of increasing transparency on the county board and talking about who you do business with and who you accept donations from. I don't accept donations from anyone looking to do business within DuPage County. Unfortunately, my opponent does. Thank you.
Okay. Same question, candidate Elliott. What are your top 3 priorities?
Sure, I'm happy to give those to you, but first I want to point out one significant difference between my opponent and I. I have substantive, real change and programs in mind for DuPage County. She was asked what her priorities were, and she used the bulk of her answer to essentially sling mud at me. I'm happy to talk about my statement of economic interest, in which everything I've done is fully and transparently played out. But it's important to note that she gave you very little of substance other than to sling mud. Now, here's my priorities. Number 1, we've got to recover from COVID. We've been working on this aggressively throughout the entirety of the COVID pandemic. It's not just a public health issue, it's also an economic development and recovery issue. As the head of the Economic Development Committee, I've spearheaded programs to get free Wi-Fi for kids who need it for school, to get small business loans to keep them going, to provide workforce development. Number 2, we need to continue to provide and support our public safety officers. Very little else we do in DuPage County works if we're not safe in our homes, our streets, and our neighborhoods. And I'm apparently not going to get to number 3.
You'll have time later on, I think.
I suspect so.
Okay, second question, and this time we're going to start with candidate Elliott. What deficiencies do you feel have surfaced across the county during the pandemic, and how would you address them?
Quite frankly, I'm not certain that I can cast a lot of blame on deficiencies in the county. I think we've done a remarkable job. We've had a great assist from the federal government, which gave us some badly needed funding that we were able to distribute to our businesses, our residents, and our local municipalities. One of the things that I think we frankly were caught flat-footed on, as I think most people were, is because we've never had this before, we didn't have a good stockpile of PPE. The county didn't, and neither did many of our private businesses or hospitals and the like. I think that's a priority for us to move forward and invest significant resources in that going forward. The other thing that I don't think comprehended at first, but I think moved quite quickly to address, was the needs of our social services providers. When a pandemic hits, you've got places like PADS, Metropolitan Family Services, Catholic Charities, and others that cannot operate as they usually do. We were able to provide them with a significant amount of resources and funding to assist them in their operations.
Thank you. Candidate LaPlante, what deficiencies do you feel have surfaced during the pandemic?
So I think that right off the bat, from when the pandemic first hit, the lack of testing that was available was really problematic. And it was a problem in the entire country. This wasn't specific to DuPage County. And that was a failure of leadership at the federal level. But not being able to get a test for COVID was really, really problematic and set us back, I think, in terms of completely controlling this pandemic. I think it also really highlighted the difference between the haves and the haves not. I mean, this is something that's going to be showing all of our cracks in the foundations, and that's what happened. I do think that DuPage County moved really quickly to make sure that testing was available. We just had a family member tested yesterday. It's easy, it's smooth. We got our results back today. So a lot of improvement is happening. I think also we have to make sure that there's a robust e-learning plan in place in schools. That was also something that felt really hard at first. And I wish that we could make sure that there's always a plan in place in case something like this ever, God forbid, happens again. Thank you.
Okay. And moving on to the third question, and this one will be directed to candidate LaPlante. Please comment on the 3 DuPage County propositions that are on the November 3rd ballot.
So those propositions are very, very confusing. I've had a lot of questions as a PC when I go around and I've been talking to voters, and I've been seeing a lot of questions about them on social media. I'm really disappointed in those questions. My opponent did vote to put those questions on the ballot. I feel that they are purposefully misleading. They don't really purport to solve anything, and it's sort of a tactic. And the Daily Herald did an editorial on specifically those 3 questions, and they were also perplexed they said that no one can even pretend that this means that they want opinions from the voters, and they wanted to know why on earth these 3 questions were placed on the ballot. I'm disappointed. What we need to be doing is making voting easier for voters. We have to be clear. We need clarity for everyone for this election. And instead, those 3 questions, I think, muddied the waters, and they're just causing confusion. And it's just simply a political ploy. I'm not happy with those questions. Thank you.
Okay, candidate Elliott, do you have comments on the 3 DuPage County propositions?
I sure do. I think it's important to recognize that at the meeting that we voted on that, there were actually 5 questions that were considered. I actually wanted another question on the ballot, which was a reduction in the size of the DuPage County Board. That didn't pass. There's another measure to consolidate the clerk's office and the recorder's office. That didn't pass either. So these are the 3 that were left. The board voted 13-5, bipartisan group, to put these on the ballot. They are intended to address issues of spending that are different from issues that we've had previously. One of them relates to the stockpile of PPE, which is something that we want to get feedback on. I indicated earlier that I thought that was a priority. That's the reason that's one of the questions. The other questions are primarily public safety related, and frankly, those are motivated by many of the letters and emails that we get. Emails, I guess nobody really writes letters to us anymore. And the actions of some of the other units of government to defund police, to take funding away from police, and to hurt police training. We want to get feedback on that.
Okay, next question, and again, we're going to stay with candidate Elliott. In the face of a rapidly changing climate, how can DuPage County effectively deal with the impact, such as flooding, and create more sustainable solutions?
This is one that's near and dear to my heart, particularly on the flooding issue, which we are seeing more of. I've been heavily involved in flood control issues in my tenure on the DuPage County Board, particularly in the Valley View area, where we need to work very closely with the Morton Arboretum, the Army Corps of Engineers, and others to address that. The other thing we can do is to take steps to actually try and slow or stop climate change. It's here, it's real, and we need to address it. In one of our earlier discussions, my opponent said that she thought that climate change war started at the ballot box. I think that's partly true, but I also really think climate change, combating climate change, starts in our homes. Each of us needs to take the steps necessary in our own lives to reduce our carbon footprints and to take the steps to do that. One of the important roles that the county can do through regional planning is to encourage higher density, transit-oriented planning in our downtown areas. I recognize that's not always popular in Glen, Ellyn, and in other places, but that's a direction we've got to go in the future.
Okay, candidate LaPlante, asking you about the changing climate and your suggestions for solution.
So we have to move fast, and we have to move now, and this has to be a priority. I would love to see more highlights on the environmental committee on the DuPage County Board. Something that I notice is that there is a budget for environmental program of only $246,000 budgeted. I would love to see an increase in budgeting for that programming, because I do believe that we have to educate, go into the schools, educate kids on every little tiny step that we can all make that's within our control, that we can do to combat climate change. I also think that we can offer community education to adults. In terms of flooding, we really need to focus on planting native plants and trees. Again, that's something that we can work with the Morton Arboretum. Scarce, that's a wonderful organization that can help with educating and going in and teaching people how to landscape their homes, and then of course, how to villages and municipalities, how to use native landscaping in order to prevent flooding. But I do think that we have to make this a priority within our budget. Thank you.
Okay, staying with candidate LaPlante, this question deals with racism. It's a little bit long, so let me read it. Where do you identify systemic racism within our county operations? And how will you collaborate with our diverse population members to eliminate implicit bias, to ensure every individual has an equal opportunity?
That is a long question, but it's a very important question, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that I answer each facet of that question. One of the most important things that we can do is make sure that we are recruiting diverse candidates to run for office at the county board, in all our municipal offices, everywhere. What I hope to do by running for office is I want people to see what I'm doing and say, if she can do it, I can do it. I would like to go out and recruit and talk to diverse candidates or potential candidates, encourage them to run for office. I want to build a bigger table. I want to make sure that more voices are heard. In terms of fighting systemic racism, that has to begin with education. We have to start right in the schools. We have to make sure that we are teaching about implicit bias that we all have. We have to own it, we have to name it, we have to call it out, and then we have to change it. Most importantly, we need to listen. We need to ask very hard questions, and we have to listen to those very hard answers. Thank you.
Candidate Elliott, do you need me to read the question again?
No, I think I remember the question. It was a long question, but I agree with Ms. LaPlante that it's an important question. There's two things that the county can do right now, and I'm proud to say that I'm helping lead both of them. Number one is the county needs to create a disadvantaged business enterprise program, which we don't have. We've got $180 or so million general fund budget, a $430 some odd million overall budget. And we don't have a DBE program. So we're working very hard now with nationally recognized consultants to set that up, because we need to provide, and we want to provide, economic opportunity to veteran-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses that are, quite frankly, historically excluded from this area. Number two, and again, I know this is going to be controversial with some people, we need to look at affordable and fair housing. That's historically been a third rail, quite frankly, in DuPage County. I'm proud to say that Ellyn Sanguinetti, our former Lieutenant Governor, is doing a fantastic job with her organization. We're going to have them in October, I hope, to begin addressing the barriers to affordable housing in DuPage County. We want DuPage County to be affordable and accessible and open to everyone.
Okay, and staying with candidate Elliott, another long question. Should the county board face a budget shortfall, how will you ensure that the $1 million in human services grants will be allocated to the over 60 organizations like PADS, Bridge Communities, food pantries, etc., that protect our most vulnerable constituents?
So I'm a big advocate of that $1 million. Actually, this year, I think because of the CARES Act funding, it was substantially more than $1 million that we were able to downstream. And I'm a big advocate because when I was on the board of Metropolitan Family Services, one of the things I realized was that many of those social services organizations can provide services more efficiently and more effectively than the county government can. They do a tremendous job. We face budget shortfalls every year. We faced a tremendous one this year, but I'm proud to say we were able to find a balanced budget. And we need to and intend to and will continue to fight for that $1 million program. It's critical. And if COVID showed us anything, it's that those types of organizations need to be sustained at all costs. I'm a big believer in that.
Okay, candidate LaPlante.
I'm so grateful, thank God, that we had the $161 million that was given in federal grant money called the CARES Act, because that really helped cover some of the budget shortfalls that the county board was facing. In terms of that $1 million and covering the 60 organizations, that has to be a priority. That has to be, no matter what, we have to cover those organizations. During this unprecedented pandemic, we have to make sure that our social services are intact, that the most vulnerable among us are protected. I believe that a budget is a moral document, and it shows who we care for, how we treat the people that are the most vulnerable in our community. We have to make that our priority no matter what. So thanks to that the $161 million, if we have to move money around to cover those 60 organizations, then that's what needs to happen during these very, very difficult times. Thank you.
Okay, candidate LaPlante. How can voters be assured that the election infrastructure and procedures are adequate to ensure safe elections in DuPage County?
Our new county clerk, Jean Kazmarek, has spent so much time, her heart and soul, putting into making sure that these elections are run smoothly and fairly. That is, voting integrity is an absolute priority in DuPage County. And we've all seen and heard all the noise and nonsense and the threats that are coming about this upcoming election. And frankly, I think a lot of people are scared. And I think that's why at the very first day that early voting was available at the DuPage County Fairgrounds, there was a line 2 hours long. People wanted to vote. And so I think voting, we're going to have to be vote early. You heard President Obama, he said, get your ballot, vote early. And that's what we're going to have to do. And we're going to have to make sure that every single vote counts. That means we have to get out and vote. You have to encourage your neighbors, encourage your friends to make sure that they fill out their ballots properly. If anyone needs a ride, give them a ride. But that's the most important aspect of democracy, our fair and safe elections. Thank you.
Okay, Candidate Elliott, how are we going to ensure safe elections?
Well, there's two components of that. The first is to provide adequate funding for the elections, which we've done. In the last 2 years, since the Election Commission was rolled into the clerk's office, we've provided what in my research shows are record amounts of money to the clerk's office to update operations and to get the elections done. So the first step is adequate funding. The second step is adequate execution. I will say, I think our clerk and her staff have done a tremendous job this year. Springfield did not do them any favors. They got a number of different mandates and different rules and different regulations during the course of the spring. They're trying very hard to do that. I do agree that given the course of the pandemic and given that we don't know what's going to happen, nobody's really sure what the world is going to look like on November 3rd. And so I do encourage people to get to the polls early. If you are going to vote by mail, as I am, expect delays. I had a significant delay between the time I submitted my application and the time it was received. So just vote early. If you're voting by mail, don't wait till the last second.
And this will be our final question before closing statements. And staying with candidate Elliott, how will you work for cooperation on the county board regardless of political party affiliation?
I would think that the answer to that would be that I would continue to do just what I've been doing. As I've told people throughout the district when I talk to them, the problems we're facing in DuPage County are not Republican problems and they're not Democratic problems, they're people problems. When a neighborhood suffers from flooding, when a neighborhood has an adult business, when people are worried about property taxes or schools, they're not really concerned about whether you're Democrat or Republican. And one of the things that every elected official needs to remember is that once we're elected, we represent every single person in our district, regardless of whether they voted for us or not. When we act in a divisive manner, when we become bomb throwers, when we engage in partisan rhetoric, we're breaking faith with at least some part of the people that are in our district. I can tell you that as a county board representative for the last 4 years, I spent a lot of time trying to help people with problems, people that I know didn't vote for me, but they deserve my attention because that's what I was elected to do. And I'm proud to say that I've worked with Democrats and Republicans, and they've worked with me to try and solve those people's problems because that's what we're elected to do. If we all remember that, we'll be fine.
Okay, candidate LaPlante, how will you ensure cooperation on the county board?
Well, I've always said that we have to see each other as neighbors, because that's what we are. And we have to see each other as citizen servants. And if we can't make it work at the local level, then there's no help for us at the national level. And things are not going so well at the national level in terms of discourse. But I also do believe that the DuPage is changing, and we have to make room for changing opinions, viewpoints, diverse viewpoints. And just because someone disagrees with you, and it's called a debate or discourse, that doesn't mean that it's disrespectful. It doesn't mean that someone is slinging mud. It means that there are other viewpoints to be had. And I think with DuPage and our country changing and shifting, people do have to get used to that. DuPage isn't the same way it's been for the past 180 years under one party rule. So now we have difference of opinions, different viewpoints, different platforms, and that's where we start. And then we have to look at each other as neighbors, work together towards one purpose, which is to serve the citizens of DuPage County. Thank you.
Okay, that's it for questioning and answers. And now we're going to move to our closing statements. Again, the candidates have 1 minute, and we'll begin with candidate LaPlante.
The county board has been under a one-party rule and a Republican majority for its entire inception since the 19th century. It's time for a county board that is a true reflection of the DuPage residents. This historic election is our chance for change. We need change from the top of the ballot all the way down to these local races. Every race matters and every vote counts. It's time for all of us to show up and ensure our voices are heard and a resounding message is sent. We need to elect people who believe in science, not superstition. We need to elect people who believe in kindness and decency over hateful rhetoric and division. We need to elect people who are interested in moving our community forward, not backward, who want to build bridges, not walls. For more information on my campaign, please visit helplynnwin.org. I humbly ask for your vote. I know true leadership and true independence are sorely needed right now, and I promise to deliver both. Thank you so much and have a good evening.
Okay, and now we turn to candidate Elliott for your 1-minute closing statement.
Thank you, and thank you for your service tonight, Madam Moderator. Let me say one thing about DuPage County. In the state of Illinois, where there's not a lot of good stories to tell about government, DuPage County is one government that actually works. We balance our budget every year, we provide critical services to our residents, we get the job done, and we do it economically. Since 2007, DuPage County has raised its property taxes only once. We've reduced our head count and we've kept our budget generally flat. I don't think there's any other unit of government in Illinois that can say anything close to that. In my time on the county board, which was the last 4 years, I've worked very hard to represent all of the residents of my district, regardless of their nationality, their creed, their party. I'm a uniter, I'm not a divider. I work with people. And again, I think that's why the people who are closest to the DuPage County Board are almost unanimously supporting my candidacy, including the nonpartisan mayors of Carroll Stream, Wheaton, Glendale Heights, Glen Ellyn, and Lombard. Thank you.
Thank you both. And now we'll turn to the candidates for the Forest Preserve District. So I'd ask them to unmute themselves and turn on their video. Okay. Excellent. So now we'll begin with each of the candidates' 2-minute opening statements. And again, we're going to begin in alphabetical order. So we're going to hear from the Democratic candidate, Gahris.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this forum. I very much appreciate what the League of Women Voters is doing, and it's an honor to be here. About myself, I grew up in rural Southwest Ohio. I always had access to nature in my backyard. We even had Boy Scout campouts in the woods on our property. So I was very active with the Scouts at that time. I'm running now because, like my wife Bonnie, I deeply care about the environment, and also because I care about how people explore nature for a personal sense of joy and well-being. I think it's imperative that everyone feels safe and secure and comfortable while visiting our preserves. They should be viewed as sacred and healing spaces, which have been very helpful to, I think now is 4 million visitors who are visiting during these troubled times. So what can I offer as a Forest Preserve Commissioner? Well, for starters, I know how government works at all levels. I spent many years working on environmental issues for the state of Ohio and the US EPA. I was a Glen Ellyn Environmental Commissioner for 12 years. I've also spent many hours working on the restoration of natural areas in the forest preserves and in the Glen Ellyn Park District. And I've been a volunteer leader with the Sierra Club and other local groups. I have a unique set of skills that can't be found on the board currently. I can help the board address complex problems for the benefit of nature and the people of DuPage County. So I have 3 main goals or initiatives. First would be natural area restoration. This is my first priority, so that we may have fully vibrant ecosystems for the benefit of people and nature. And this will benefit people through cleaner air and water, a smaller carbon footprint, and reduced flooding. Second, I will work to interconnect and enhance the extensive trail system to maximize opportunities for immersion in our beautiful natural areas and to make them accessible to everyone. And third, I will bring more solar energy to the district with the ultimate goal of net zero carbon emissions, and doing this in a cost-effective manner. We must aggressively continue on the path to address climate change, and we're already working in that direction. So in summary, I look forward to the opportunity to serve the people of DuPage County. Thank you.
Okay. Now we have a 2-minute opening statement from the incumbent Republican candidate, Tim Whelan.
Hi, folks. I'm Tim Whelan, and I am the District 4 Commissioner for the Forest Preserve of DuPage County. And just by way of information, the board consists of 6 district commissioners and then a president county-wide. The board establishes policy for the operation of our 26,000 acres of green space and the structures on the green space owned by the Forest Preserve. And the board oversees a $92 million annual budget and 300 wonderful, dedicated, and highly qualified employees. I serve as the treasurer for the district as well. District 4 is blessed to have Churchill Forest Preserve, Willowbrook Wildlife Center, Hidden Lakes, and Denata Forest Preserve within our boundaries. And by the way, I want to dedicate just a moment of my time to the memory of Paul Cox, who passed away this week. Paul was the premier historian for the Friends of Denata and for the Denata House. I'm especially proud that the board is dedicated to the protection of the wildlife in our urban setting. We've expanded Willowbrook Wildlife Center with new animal hospital powered by solar energy and installation of permeable pavers, and expanded development of the Willowbrook Wildlife Center on our priority list of things to get done in the next 5 years, of which we have established 30 priority projects. And in District 4, that includes Denata Rice Lake restoration and Hidden Lakes Kings Grove restoration at Hidden Lakes Forest Preserve. I've been working to get the East Branch Trail planned, developed, and constructed and to get it on the priority list. The trail will run from Butterfield up to Churchill Woods Preserve and to the McKee House. And it gives us access in the center of DuPage County for biking, hiking, and enjoying nature. I'm excited for the future preservation of green space in DuPage County, and I'm always dedicated to ensuring access to nature and all the good things that that provides.
Okay, now we're going to jump right into the question and answers, and we're going to begin with candidate Whelan. What are 3 key issues currently facing the Forest Preserve District?
Well, I always consider that the Willowbrook Wildlife Center in District 4 is particularly an important issue to continue to expand and develop our national image in terms of how we handle with our wildlife. Our Forest Preserve Board has developed a strategic plan and these priority projects that I am dedicated to funding and developing, and particularly in District 4, for those areas that I mentioned with regard to the restoration of the Denata Rice Lake area and the Hidden Lakes area. And then I do have some other issues that I really want to bring up. One of our prime missions is to acquire property. And I think it's the responsibility of the Forest Preserve to acquire the 52 acres in Carroll Stream called Community Park and bring that into the Forest Preserve, because that's what we do and that's what we take care of. Also, I am always been dedicated to the preservation of the McKee House and would like to see that preserved and reused.
Okay, and same question for candidate Gahris. What do you believe are the 3 key issues currently facing the Forest Preserve District?
Well, I think the main issue is we have a lot of land, and it's very difficult to manage that well. I'm sensing that, or just observing, just by going to various preserves, that there's a lot of invasive weeds, buckthorn and things, and it's always been a challenge for the Forest Preserve to keep up with that. So acquiring new parcels means more management, and we need to be. I think that leads into the second issue, is maybe we need to really ramp up our volunteer program some more. I went to an open house for volunteers, and so I think there's been some effort and some recognition that we need to rely as much as possible on volunteers, because that helps people get engaged. So I think that's a major issue. And a third, maybe, I think we've missed some opportunities to expand solar, and we have to work with Springfield to bring more of that to us.
Okay. Candidate Gahris, What are your plans for improvement projects for our preserves?
Well, I think start with, I think we need to interconnect trails, and I think that East Branch Trail is a good start in terms of the middle. And I think there's other connections we need to be looking at to make sure people can find access from their neighborhoods or from wherever they live. I'm an avid cyclist, so I think we can spend a lot of time thinking about better places to connect trails together so that people can have access on by bicycle. And so I think that's the main thing, and just keep focusing on restoration.
Okay, candidate Whelan, same question, improvement projects.
I'm not sure it would be so much improvement projects as to embrace the priority projects that our staff brought to us. They brought over 400 projects to us, and over a period of a year and a half, we culled through all those, and we came up with 30 priority projects that deal with infrastructure issues that we have to do for our structures, that deal with natural resource issues, and that's the main focus that we do in the Forest Preserve. And those are the two that I mentioned that particularly affect us here in DuPage County, in District 4. And then with regard to Willowbrook Wildlife Center, I can't emphasize that enough. That is a nationally renowned operation. And that's something that regardless of who is on the Forest Preserve from District 4, we've got to make that an emphasis in the years going forward.
Okay, and staying with candidate Whelan, this question is on climate change. What impact, if any, has climate change made on DuPage County's natural areas, and what is your recommendation for mitigation if needed?
You know, that wonderful staff that I mentioned, the 300 or so qualified people, these people are scientists. They are bright people. They're environmentalists. They tell us what we need to do in order to address the issues of climate change, or they suggest to the board so that we can set the policies that address those needs in climate change. I was particularly struck when I talked to one employee in natural resources, and I said, well, what are the things we're doing for clean water and for stormwater and for the environment and addressing some of these issues with regard to climate change? And he said, Commissioner, that's what we do. And he's exactly right, that our employees are always addressing every day the issues that are brought about by the increasing climate change issues that we have. And I'm particularly concerned about the water and the water quality that we have in this county and the stormwater flooding issues. And that's what the Forest Preserve does as well. Thank you.
Okay, candidate Gahris, climate change, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's certainly quite real. I think people on this panel agree. And I think the Forest Preserves have a role to play to address that. And I agree with Tim. We do have a very strong staff. And I think one of the big impacts we're going to be seeing going forward is bigger stormwater events. So we got to be looking at how the forests serve as a sponge in the prairies. They soak up a lot of water. And we got to look at areas that have been disturbed and ways we can improve the soil structure to absorb water better. I think that's very important. I think with putting in more solar energy and doing other things that the staff may be already looking at to say reduce or improve energy efficiency, we can bring our carbon footprint down to zero, particularly if you consider how the forests and prairies are actually absorbing carbon. So we need to focus on that and serve as a role model for other people so it has a strong educational value.
Okay. Next question, beginning with candidate Gahris. Many forest preserves are only accessible by car. How do you think they could be made more accessible to all?
That's a very good question. And I've actually been to preserves where it's hard to find a place. If you have, some of them you have to drive to because of where they are, like in the north end of the county. Like I thought I would explore a new preserve and maybe one of the smaller ones. And you have to park in the street, walk across a highway or something. So even a small gravel parking lot might be all you need if there's a trailhead there. And then if there's interconnecting bicycle trails, then people can access it that way. But not everybody can ride a bicycle. So we need access by cars to small parking lots and a few strategic places, because I've noticed that's missing in some of the preserves.
Okay, candidate Whelan, same question.
Yeah, accessibility to nature is always important. Always remembering that we have to minimize our footprint. And so to be able to get that access, particularly in District 4, I believe that's the motivation that the folks have come forward with in this district to develop the DuPage River East, the DuPage River East Branch, the East Branch Trail River in DuPage County. As I explained, running from Butterfield in north. And actually it runs all through the center of the county to give people access to nature. And that's what we have to, just have to dedicate ourselves to doing that so that we can all have that nature to access, but always remembering that as I've learned from scouting as an Eagle Scout, that that we have to leave the place better than we left it, than we came. And that's what we always have to do when we're talking about accessing our natural preserves.
Okay, and candidate Whelan, given the ongoing pandemic, how do you see the virus impacting future programming?
I'm not so sure it's going to impact the programming. We've had to cut down on some of our programming. So all that we're going to be doing as the pandemic subsides, hopefully, is expanding our programming. It's really not the mission of the Forest Preserve to promote recreation. It's more preservation of the green space, but we do have archery and horseback riding and all of those type of things that will continue to open up as the pandemic cuts down on the pandemic. And so we're going to increase those programming things. But the thing that struck me, all of this from the very beginning, was that we left the preserves open. We had our preserves open. Had a little bit of problems with some of the dog parks and some of the lakes, but it was just great to be able to tell people, you can come out to the Forest Preserve and you can enjoy nature. You can bring your children out there. You can just have a great time and enjoy the healing part of nature.
Candidate Gahris, do you see the virus impacting programming?
I do agree. It has that. I think we're going to see some subsidence of the impact. I think, well, I remember at least we kept the trails open last winter, but programming came to a halt for a while until we learned more and we got new guidance and the state adopted new policies. And I'm hopeful that in the future we could have more outdoor activities that allow people to be enjoying nature as part of a program without being socially too close. So I think there's opportunities going forward because we understand the pandemic better now. We understand how to manage it better. And so I think we'll get through this. And I'm just glad the trails were open because that really made a difference for a lot of people.
Candidate Gahris, do you think the current pay and benefits given to Forest Preserve commissioners are justified?
Well, and I think about what the county board members do and the complex issues they deal with of all kinds. And I look at the Forest Preserve board members and how we would be focusing on just the Forest Preserve. It's a part-time job, to be honest. And so I'm not too keen on having the same level of pay as the county board. I think we could consider lowering the pay somewhat. I'm also aware that some younger people might be needing income, and if they want to run for office, they need some income to support themselves, but it's still a part-time job. And I'm not taking benefits other than just the pay itself, because I have other benefit package that I have as a retiree from federal government. So I'm not going to be relying on taxpayers to pay for that.
Okay, candidate Whelan, what are your thoughts on the pay and benefits?
I mentioned that 92 million annual budget that we have. And if you look at the compensation that's paid to commissioners, it doesn't even rise to the level of 0.5%. So the job that we do as commissioners is just not taking care of the forest preserves. it's a big job taking care of the forest preserves and all of the aspects that relate to the forest preserves. It is not just a part-time job, but it depends on the commissioner and what the commissioner puts into that job. And one of the jobs that we have is to promote the green space and to promote the environmental important aspects of what the forest preserves does, to promote what we do with regard to stormwater management. And all of those things are not just taking care of the forest preserves, they're taking care of all the needs that we have in this community and how the forest preserves relate to those needs. So, I have no problems with the compensation right at the moment, and that's my answer.
Okay, candidate Whelan. The Forest Preserve District has combined efforts with other units of government on projects such as the Urban Stream Research Center with DuPage County. What other cooperative efforts should the Forest Preserve District undertake?
We do undertake a lot of intergovernmental agreements with many of the municipalities, the county particularly. We do wetland development with the county. We do joint purchasing with the county, which you say that's kind of a mundane thing, but we purchase a lot of stuff, and to be able to get them at a lesser cost for the taxpayer because of our cooperative efforts with the county and with the state and with the other municipalities, it's an important aspect. We also, one of the more perhaps unknown things is IT. We use a lot of computers and IT development in the forest preserves, and we cooperate with the county so we can cut down on those kind of costs. One of the other things that people don't really know about is when we mow all of these areas, we're next to municipalities and we're next to counties. So we enter into agreements with them so that we can cut down on those costs to maintain the green space. So we do a lot of cooperation, and I encourage us to keep that up.
Okay, candidate Gahris, your thoughts on cooperative efforts?
Well, I do also see a lot of cooperation. I think that DuPage County has done well with regard to cooperation between the county board and the forest preserve and certain municipalities. So I think that's a plus. One thing I want to explore further is working with the state of Illinois. If there are certain policies or certain issues that come up where we can leverage more resources in the state, just to keep up with all of the needs for the forest preserve. I think that's something we can look at a little bit more deeply in the future.
Okay, and this is going to be your final question before we go to closing statements. And this is for candidate Gahris first. Specific experiences and qualifications do you have that make you the better choice for Forest Preserve Commissioner?
Well, I've had a lot of experience working at different levels of government. This includes some projects that involve dealing with the public in the city of Detroit, dealing with environmental issues in the inner city, where you have to deal with people who are different than you and talk to them and learn where they're coming from. And I think that could help us understand the needs of the districts, that the people in our district here in DuPage, are we serving everybody's needs equally? That's just an example. And I've got an engineering background and a master's degree in environmental science from Miami University, where we were focusing on interdisciplinary problem solving. So I'm used to dealing with people from various backgrounds and disciplines.
Okay, candidate Whelan?
Well, I think two things. Dedication to knowing what we need in the forest preserves and spending the time to make sure that our policies reflect that on the board. And that requires a lot of education about restoration of land. It requires education about stormwater management. It requires education about land management. And I seek out those answers from the staff. Everything from those things to even culling deer. That's what we do in the forest preserve where we have to. And so you have to learn about those things, and it takes time and it takes energy to do those things. The second thing I think that is so important for a commissioner is to listen. To be on a board and you listen to what your fellow commissioners are doing, that you listen to your staff. Most importantly, that you listen to the citizens of the county that share what we do on the forest preserve and express their desires. So I think listening and dedication are the most important things that I bring as a commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for adhering to our time limits. Now we're going to move into closing statements, and we're going to begin with candidate Whelan. You have 1 minute.
Thank you for tuning in, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters and Madam Moderator for this forum and this opportunity. Very simply, I am asking for your vote to return me to the Forest Reserve Commissioner of District 4. Leadership in the growth of Willowbrook Wildlife Center is what I provide. Leadership in making the East Branch DuPage River Trail a reality is what I provide. Leadership in preserving and restoring the McKee House and the history of the Forest Preserve is what I provide. Leadership in acquiring property when we can and maintaining and caring for the property that we have is what I provide. Leadership in preserving the green space is what I provide. And I ask for your vote for Forest Preserve Commissioner.
Thank you. And now closing statement, candidate Gahris.
Great, thank you again. I appreciate all that the League does to support our democracy in DuPage and beyond. And I think this is a great opportunity for me to serve on the board because I feel it's something I'm destined to do as a lifelong environmentalist and environmental professional. It's a pleasure to have an able opponent, Tim Whelan, but I have experience working with all levels of government and have prior board experience. I know how to manage and obtain grant money. I can effectively interact with the public, and I understand the work being done by the district's professional staff. And I'm willing to and able to lobby Springfield for resources and policies that we need for a well-managed forest preserve. So again, I thank you, and let's build a greener DuPage together.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending tonight's candidates forum for the 4th District races for County Board and Forest Preserve District. I want to thank the League for hosting tonight's forum. I also want to thank the candidates for participating and thank those of you who either attended in person or are watching the recording. Please let your neighbors know that they can find the recording of this event on the Glen Ellyn League's website, lwvge.org. Also, for all election and voting information, you can turn to the League's Illinois Voters Guide. I wish you a good evening. Be sure to vote and stay well. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.